Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 217 for the 16th of December 2012. Richard Saunders here with you from an overcast but hot and steamy and muggy Sydney, Australia. We're going to kick off with Dr. Rachie Reports. Dr. Rachie is going to fill us in on the very recent developments with the Australian Vaccination Network, or what will they be called in the future, because the Minister for Fair Trading in the state of New South Wales has acted and has told the Australian Vaccination Network that they are not to continue trading under that name because that name is basically deceptive. Wow, amazing news, amazing news. More about this at the top of the show with Dr. Rachie Reports. And following that, we have an interview with a very, very dear friend of mine, Lynne Kelly. Now, Lynne Kelly, in skeptical circles, is famous for being a very good cold reader. In fact, she is really one of the best I have ever seen. She's written a book called The Skeptic's Guide to the Paranormal. She doesn't claim any magical powers, of course. She does cold reading to demonstrate how cold reading works to people. Well, that was some years back, and more recently, Lynne has been writing books about crocodiles and spiders. But now, wow, now she's come up with a very interesting new theory regarding Stonehenge. Yeah, Stonehenge. And no, as someone wrote to me on Twitter saying, what's this new theory? Is it that Stonehenge was a landing site for UFOs? No. It's actually, this theory is really down to earth. It's really interesting. It's engaging. And you'll find out more about that with Lynne Kelly coming up a bit later on in the show. Then to round off the show, it's Maynard. Maynard at the Australian Skeptics Convention a few weeks ago at the meet and greet. The drinkies, the social aspect of skepticism. Maynard runs around with his microphone, chatting to all sorts of people from around the world who were attending the Australian Skeptics National Convention and asking them why they're there and what they expect and what they hope. Good stuff, really good fun stuff from Maynard. Now, a couple of little notes from me. If you visit www.skeptics.com.au, and up the top you'll find a little link that says Features. If you click that, or you mouse over it, and then you click the menu item that says the $100,000 prize, click that, you can now download our $100,000 prize brochure, the one from Australian Skeptics. Now it's in the form of a check you can print out and pass around, and I admit that we stole this idea directly from the James Randi Educational Foundation. Thank you, JREF. Great idea. We've nicked your idea. We've made our own one. So, folks, if you're in Australia, download the $100,000 prize flyer, print it out, and give it to your favourite psychic. Now, for all you skeptics listening to me in the state of Victoria here in Australia, on Twitter, you can follow Skeptic Go Vic, SkepticGovic. Skeptic Go Vic is your one-stop shop there on Twitter for information about skeptical adventures and organisations and gatherings in the state of Victoria. But it gets better than that. If you head over to Facebook and you do a search for Skeptic Groups of Victoria, you can find the Facebook page. So there you go. Skeptics in the pub, social opportunities, meet and greets, all sorts of things on Facebook and Twitter. That's Skeptic Groups of Victoria. Check it out. Now, before we start the show, in the past week an interesting date came and went. 12/12/12. The 12th day of the 12th month of the 12th year. 12/12/12. And it was brought to my attention that a certain astrologer, Jessica Adams, wrote some predictions for the 12/12/12 date, and these ended up on the internet. So I'm going to cue up some mystical music, and I'm going to read out the posting that appeared. Back it up! Save everything before 12/12/2012 by Lucy Kippist, as published online at news.com.au, December 11, 2012. Before you leave the office tonight, back up everything important on a USB stick. That's the advice from astrologist Jessica Adams, who told news.com.au that tomorrow's date of 12/12/2012 will spell chaos for the internet and the media world. Quote, on 12/12/12, the world is feeling the impact of a stressful pattern between Mercury and Neptune, the planet that rules leaks, like WikiLeaks, and also flooded computer networks, end quote, said Adams. Just how this disaster and chaos will play out is anyone's guess, but Adams said it pays to be prepared. But the news isn't all bad, because tomorrow's date is significant for other reasons too. For one thing, it is the last time we'll see those numbers in our lifetime. There will also be plenty of weddings, as people believe the synchronicity of the date is an indication of prosperity and longevity. However, the reprieve will be short-lived. Adams said the chaos is predicted to return on 21/12/2012. Yep, that's the same date the Mayan calendar has predicted the end of the world. Quote, on 21/12/12, Jupiter in Gemini, which rules the media, is in a critical pattern. That is also the day Anonymous threatened to attack some internet platforms, end quote, said Adams. Batten down the hatches and start saving those photos, everyone. So there you go, folks. I'm sorry that the internet went into chaos on the 12th of the 12th/12. I don't know how we all recovered, but somehow we did. But for now, I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to open the fridge. I'm going to get some leftover chops from the barbecue and have some hot sauce. Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. Yeah, why not? And while I'm enjoying those chops, I'll let you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Now it's time for Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr. Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to Dr. Rachie Reports. Well, we had some big news overnight in Australia, with the New South Wales government ordering the Australian Vaccination Network to change their name or face closure. The news hit at midnight on Friday night as a news article appeared describing an order given by the Department of Fair Trading directing the notorious Australian Vaccination Network to change their name or face deregistration. The move follows what has been described as numerous complaints from both the public and the Australian Medical Association that the name the Australian Vaccination Network is misleading to the public and confuses parents when searching for reliable information on vaccination. Several of these incidences have been reported publicly, including a misunderstanding by the Australian College of Midwives, who mistakenly sent out invitations for an AVN seminar to all its members. In a story published in Medical Observer magazine, the executive officer, Miss Anne Kinnear, said, "Subsequent information that's come to hand has made me realise it's a mistake. She was unaware until her membership informed her that the AVN was an anti-immunisation lobby." As far back as 2009, the Australian Skeptics, with sponsorship from Dick Smith, took out a full-page ad in The Australian to warn parents not to look to the AVN for health information. During the flurry of publicity that ensued from this campaign, Dick Smith said, "They are actually anti-vaccination and they should put on every bit of their material that they are anti-vaccination in great big words. They have every right for that belief, but they should communicate it clearly so people are not misled." In 2011, the Minister for Health, the Honorary Jeff Wilson, and the Queensland Chief Health Officer issued a statement about the AVN saying, "Fringe groups like the misleadingly named Australian Vaccination Network are wrong to discourage people from getting vaccinated." And indeed, parents commenting on the Stop the AVN Facebook page have shared similar stories like this one. Dear Meryl, I was attracted to the AVN several years ago because the name suggested that you might be a reputable source of information about vaccination. I found nothing of the sort on your site. I was indeed misled and deceived by your name, and I'm not the only one. Of course, the AVN are not the only ones trying to hide their true agenda from the public. But if you scratch the surface of their slick pro-choice website, you quickly find an anti-vaccine agenda. And never has this been more obvious than in the t-shirts they sell which say, "Love them, protect them, never inject them." And then there was this comment from Meryl Dorry just 2 days ago to her Yahoo list which said, "Just like there is no evidence that vaccination prevents most diseases, if there is evidence, I've yet to see it." But in recent years in Australia, things have changed and the media has been challenging the AVN on their pro-choice stance, which is what they go by. Listeners may recall a radio segment with the two Murrays where they suggested Meryl was anti-vaccine and she screeched, "I am not." Yet when journalists asked the question, "So which vaccines would you recommend?" the silence is deafening. Further evidence for the AVN's claims of being a pro-choice organisation, a 12-month investigation by the Healthcare Complaints Commission also deemed their website to be anti-vaccine and misleading. After investigating the site, they concluded that the site provides information that is solely anti-vaccination, contains information that is incorrect and misleading, and quotes selectively from research to suggest that vaccination may be dangerous. Even more recently, the AVN has been referring to themselves as Australia's vaccine safety watchdog, which of course they're not, but it certainly makes them sound more credible. The practice of anti-vaccine groups using misleading names is certainly not new. In the US, there is the NVIC, run by Barbara Loe Fisher. That's the National Vaccine Information Service. In Brisbane, there is the Vaccine Awareness and Information Service, so VAIS. And in New Zealand, there is Vaccination Information Network, or VINE. It took Meryl longer than expected to bash out a blog post about this latest threat to free speech and suppression of information, but she didn't disappoint. She suggested that if the AVN were to change their name, then why can Greenpeace continue unabated? Quote, "Greenpeace is not green, nor do they go around looking for peace. Therefore, would the department tell them to change their name too?" She also suggested that the name the Cancer Council might be misleading, leading to people thinking they're pro-cancer. Obviously. But in contrast to her usual rabid foaming blog posts, today's just seemed defeated and tired. In addition, the AVN recently spent a wad of cash and substantial time migrating their website to WordPress, only to have it infected with a cheap pills hack. Yesterday, I was not even able to reach their site as I was being redirected to direct pills from 3 browsers, and this morning the entire site was pinging 403 errors. I'm afraid the cracks are beginning to show for the AVN and Meryl Dorry. The Department of Fair Trading has indicated they can cancel the AVN's registration if they do not comply to this order to change the name by February 2013. And I want to emphasise the Minister said this is not a request, it is an order. This means they lose their incorporated status, which Meryl says will force them to shut down. In any case, it seems her fans have missed the point of the reason for the name change order, that is, it is misleading, and have offered some of the following suggestions on the AVN's Facebook page. Vaccination Truth and Transparency Network, Australian Vaccination Information Network, Australian Vaccination Choice Network, Vaccination Truth and Transparency Network, and this is my favourite so far, telling the truth about things that big pharma whores and useless media will not. Doink. If you'd like to comment on this blog post or read more information, you'll find it on my blog at skepticsbook.com, which I haven't blogged on for ages, but this gave me a reason to do so. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Ein großes Hallo an alle deutschen Zuhörer des Skeptic Zone Podcasts. Wusstet ihr, dass es auch in Deutschland einen Skeptikerverband gibt? Für weitere Informationen über uns und das Skeptiker Magazin besucht www.gwup.org. Ich wiederhole, www.gwup.org. und unsere offiziellen Facebook, Twitter und Google Plus Seiten.
Lynne Kelly is a skeptic, an author, and one of the best cold readers I have ever seen. I caught up with Lynne Kelly a few days ago to ask her about her interesting new theory about Stonehenge. And joining me on the line now is author Lynne Kelly. Hello, Lynne.
Hi, Richard.
Now, I must say that when I went down to the Australian Skeptics Convention, I saw your name on the list of speakers. I was quite pleased because we're old friends, of course, going back many years. And it was a delight because I saw you speak in Sydney. I've seen you speak in Canberra and other locations, but on different subjects, most notably things like cold reading and how to teach skepticism, which is all very good. But I was completely unprepared by your talk in Melbourne at the Australian Skeptics Convention. When I saw the preface, the outline of the talk, I really didn't know what to think. A new theory about Stonehenge, but I must say that, and it's been a couple of weeks has gone by, and I've thought about it a lot. I'm still quite blown away by the presentation you gave. Can you tell our audience? I know it's hard to do it in a brief amount of time, but you could sort of let our audience know where you're coming from with your theory on Stonehenge.
Yes, it is very hard to do briefly, unfortunately. Basically, I've looked at oral cultures in terms of, hey, these guys are the same physiologically as us, therefore they have the same intellect as us, and how do they remember so much stuff when they don't have writing? In particular, the scientific stuff. So I'm trying to move away from this concept that oral cultures, people without writing, live in some fog of superstition and have some intrinsic link with the land that you and I don't have.
Yeah.
And that's what I was working on. And they use the most extraordinary lot of memory aids to remember heaps of stuff. Just one simple example, the Navajo remembered 700 insects classified to 3 different levels, and the whole lot is kept in memory. They can identify them, tell you what they can use, what they can't, when they appear, all that sort of stuff. That's just insects. There's masses of stuff. So for a mobile culture like our Aboriginal cultures, they use landscape places as memory locations. It's the same method, the method of loci, that the ancient Greeks used to memorize massive long speeches. And the modern memory champions all still use it. But it didn't start with the Greeks. All indigenous cultures use it as well. So just a simplified version, you think of the Aboriginal songlines, they're hanging laps around the landscape, and at each landscape location they perform some kind of ritual, song, ceremony. Don't think of those rituals and ceremonies in terms of religion, although there's sure to be a spiritual concept part of it, right. But they also sing all their knowledge, including the practical knowledge, animal behaviour, plant properties, navigation, genealogies, seasonal indicators, all the stuff they need, laws, regulations, in order to survive. So my thought when I stood on Salisbury Plain in front of some great big rocks was, what's going to happen at the moment of settlement? As these mobile cultures start to settle, all their knowledge is embedded in the landscape and they're no longer moving around it. They have to replicate it, and the simplest way to do that is a circle of stones. So that's where it all started. That was 4 years ago.
So that's interesting because it's all coming back to me now, a lot of what you said in your presentation. And of course you had many diagrams of ancient cultures in there. What we would broadly call maybe sacred places, but as you pointed out, a lot of these, what we consider mystical or sacred, really had very practical reasons for being.
Absolutely. This distinction that we make in literate cultures with religions of the book, is that the sacred is separate from everyday living. You don't find that in any indigenous cultures. It's all just enmeshed all together. And so to try and say that's a sacred place and this is your everyday living place, it just doesn't work that way.
So to paint the picture, we've got cultures that have not yet got to the stage of having a written language, like we can open up a book and read all about bushcraft or when to plant crops or whatever the case may be. They need to know these things. Their very existence, their very survival depends on the group, the tribe, the culture, knowing that, oh, if you eat this, you die, or if you plant your crops here, it's not going to work, or this animal is burrowing here, this is a good time to hunt it. So what you're suggesting is all these ancient cultures had an incredibly efficient way of retaining this knowledge without writing it down.
Absolutely. A couple of corrections, just modifications. The assumption that they are on the way to writing is a problem, because writing occurs in particular situations where you've got large populations. So mobile cultures such as our Australian Aboriginal, the Pueblo cultures I worked with in America, are not on their way to something.
Yeah.
They are a totally sustainable culture as is.
Yeah.
And so modern thinking is not that hunter-gatherers are just the primitive version, but a completely sustainable lifestyle in that form. I'll give you a good example of the way ritual and pragmatism match. If you read for Pueblo on corn, they totally depend on corn to live. Pueblo are a number of American Indian cultures, and American Indian is what they prefer, not Native American, believe it or not. American Indian cultures living in the American Southwest, New Mexico, Colorado, and that area, and it's very dry. If they don't get their corn crop one year, they are all dead. They maintain 7 different varieties, 17 sub-varieties, and keep them all pure when corn cross-pollinates like you wouldn't believe. And they do that to make sure that no matter what happens, they get some food. Because one year, the weather might kill off one sort, but another sort will keep going. Now, if you look at it as a scientist, they're doing this brilliantly by the way they time their planting and rules and regulations about who can plant what where. If you look at it from the Pueblo concept, it all comes through the rituals associated with the corn mothers and the corn maidens, and the corn maidens representing the different types of corn. So you've got a different way of representing, of knowing and of understanding what is essentially a pragmatic process. But to assume the Pueblo don't understand it's pragmatic is what we've always done from our superior position, because New Age in particular has misappropriated these cultures and looked at them always in this spiritual, fluffy way.
Yeah.
They're not. They know exactly what they're doing.
This idea that cultures such as the Australian Aboriginal before the European settlement had this mystical link to the land, which is fair enough. You know, in some respects you can certainly say there's something to that, depending on how you look at it. But to think that they gained detailed knowledge simply because they were in their environment and the land sort of spoke to them is I guess what you're saying is the big myth.
Yeah, and it's deeply offensive. No doubt their feeling for the land is very, very strong.
No doubt.
Not a doubt in the world. But they learn, they study, and there's a lot of offence given in this concept that Western cultures go to school and study Indigenous cultures, learn what they learn just by being in the land, and that's all.
Yeah.
They have levels of initiation, bora grounds, all sorts, all those songs that are repeated and repeated through initiation, all the secret business and so on, and there's good reasons for that, are all part of learning. And a lot of these things take 10 to 20 years to learn and study and to get to elder status. And power in these cultures is control of knowledge, not wealth, not violence. That's not saying there isn't violence. There probably isn't individual wealth. There is violence, but it's not used for power and control.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking for in the archaeological sites. And one thing I'm looking for is a culture where there is no sign of individual wealth, no burials with massive grave goods, and no warrior class, no sign of coercion to get people to build things like Stonehenge. And there's sites right around the world that do it. I've done 3 in the thesis, but also Easter Island fits it, mound builders in the American Southeast, and the Nazca Lines, they all fit this pattern where monuments have been made massive effort that are walked or moved through in a specific sequence, because any knowledge system that isn't indexed information is lost, has some relationship to the landscape, and then there's other properties too, including portable devices, because all these cultures also use portable devices, and they use public and restricted performance sites. So I'm always looking for the both being present. And I was saying secret business is important. For the really hardcore survival stuff, you don't want the Chinese whispers effect. So it's kept highly restricted and very strictly kept word for word, whereas at the public level, well, a lot of the religion, the history, and the stuff that we are told from outside the culture can be manipulated, and it's not going to make a lot of difference to survival. You do not want to get how you prepare certain bushes in order to stop them being poisonous. You do not want to get that wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's vital that this knowledge is retained and passed on, and we get back to the original idea here without writing it down in a book saying, by the way, don't eat these berries. They have to tell their children, their culture, this important information. Now, when it comes to somewhere like Stonehenge, of course, and you had some very interesting diagrams to explain your point, we had a situation where we had the outer ring of Stonehenge, in the way you were putting it, was of more importance when it was built in the way it was used in order to aid the memory and tell the stories and impart the knowledge.
That's right. The big guys in the middle that everybody thinks of as Stonehenge, the massive sarsens as they're called, didn't come for 400 to 500 years into the use of the site. Since the ditch, the site was probably used from way back before. But the original ditch and circle, which is about 100 metres across, and there was a circle of 56 pits in which they think they were stones, they may have been posts, and a ditch, that's 500 years before the early stuff came. So that gave you the circle, and there's circles of stones and posts all over Britain, Northern Europe, because it is the perfect system for doing exactly what I'm saying, that each one represents a particular ritual, and therefore the ditch around is segmented, it's not continuous, and it's flat-bottomed. They were performing in that ditch. And then when you get the really big sites like Darrington Walls and Avebury and so on, the ditch has become much, much deeper and still flat bottoms. And they put a lot of effort, so they're not for defence. So originally the guys and girls at Stonehenge were using those 56 posts, plus a whole lot of other objects, as memory aids to the system. Then as they became settled more, you get a transition from the being closer to mobile hunter-gatherer cultures to being more like an agricultural culture, a sedentary agricultural culture. So, for example, like the Pueblo, the many African cultures, where you have the Africans referred to as secret societies. In America, they're often referred to as medicine societies, but these highly secretive groups that maintain the information. So it becomes much more restricted and much more powerful in the hands of a few. So I had a problem with Stonehenge because the outside was let decay and the big guys came into the middle, and it became very, very restricted. I'd lost my public performance site, but at exactly that same time, Darrington Walls was built, which is a massive henge, and this research has only been fully done the last 10 years, 3 kilometres down the road, massive henge, and there's your public site, appearing just as Stonehenge itself becomes much more restricted. So that dichotomy is always there.
Isn't that interesting? Because many years ago I visited Stonehenge and I thought it was a fascinating place. But my attention and my gaze was certainly directed towards those stones in the middle. And I guess the outer ring was just, well, it was a bump, or it was there, or I don't even remember thinking much about it now. I certainly was attracted to and was interested in the big centre blocks, the big centre stones. I think they've really stolen the show, huh?
They have. In some ways they're a misdirection, but they're incredible.
Oh, yes.
I mean, absolutely. But if you use my approach from the beginning, then Stonehenge fits in the pattern of stone circles all over Britain and Ireland and Scotland and so on. But my logic said if this is the case, we have got to get stone circles and timber circles, other places in the world that had no contact whatsoever, because I'm saying that this is a way that people will come up with because it works.
Yeah.
And there are. The Mississippian mound builders at Cahokia built big timber circles. There's stone circles at Göbekli Tepe, which is a site in Turkey. So you get the same sort of pattern at places all over the world. At other places where there isn't stone or timber, you'll find mounds built, and again in circles or sequences. So you're getting this same pattern everywhere, and you'll then get other things which is portable in size, decorated objects, which are also associated with all these sites.
Do you think that a lot of these cultures, and I'm sure they did, I guess I'm really answering my own question, it's part of the ritual that they walk around to a certain spot, a certain carving on the tree or a certain area within the ring, and then they would sing that part of their story?
Absolutely. Song, dance, and mythology are known as mnemonic, as memory aids. There's a whole body of research in sociology called primary orality. That's not morality, it's orality, as distinct from literacy.
Right.
I'd never heard of this 4.5 years ago, and my supervisor, when I started looking at oral cultures and science, said you better have a look at this primary orality stuff. So I wrote down primary morality and couldn't find out what it was. So there's this massive research in sociology that was done, really highlighted in the 1980s, on the way oral cultures managed to remember so much stuff through song, dance, mythology, rhythm, rhyme, and so on. And it's never crossed over into archaeology, where these sites are of oral cultures. It's sort of crossed over into anthropology, but not made the leap then into archaeology. And sheer luck that I was working on the solution when I went and found the problem, not the other way around. I did not start out to solve Stonehenge.
Isn't that interesting? And you were talking earlier about mobile devices, which I find endlessly fascinating. And then I keep harking back to my personal experiences, but many years ago, before I visited Stonehenge, I lived in Alice Springs for a time, which is right in the centre of the country, and I collected some things there that the local Aboriginal people were selling as souvenirs and things like that. And I've got a collection of little wood carvings and things. Now, you were making the point that I guess at the same time you could look at these as artistic endeavours in the art of a certain culture. They were also used as memory aids.
Absolutely. Some are quite restricted, things like the Aboriginal Chiringa, Churinga, or spelt with a TJ as well. These are highly restricted and you won't see them. But many Aboriginal paintings and so on, and this is true for oral cultures right around the world, are linked to their mythology, which is then linked to encoding all this information. At one of the Skeptics meetings in Melbourne, where I first tested out my theory, and we must get on to the idea that I believe that skepticism has this role for testing out theories. And I first presented this in the Victorian Skeptics about 18 months ago, I guess, in order to get the questions back. And one of the questions that was asked from the audience was what percentage of Aboriginal art would be for mnemonic and what percentage purely for aesthetic. And I said, well, I don't know. Look, but the Wild Prairie woman that's working with me was in the audience, and she said, all is mnemonic to story. We like it if it's artistic and aesthetic and so on, but its primary purpose is mnemonic to the stories and to the songs. So when you ask Aboriginal people what about the dreaming, they will refer to it as the knowledge and the law, not as their religion. There are not gods that they worship. They don't use those terms. Western cultures use those terms because we don't have terms for what they're saying.
Now, Lynne, I guess this really struck home to me when I was thinking about it, and believe me, I've been thinking about it ever since your talk, and it struck me that this whole thing about singing and to remember specifically, and then I thought to myself, I know thousands of words in the correct sequence because I know the lyrics of songs all my life.
Exactly.
I know thousands of words in a correct sequence. And everybody listening, if you think about it, you also know thousands of words in a correct sequence. That's very powerful stuff.
Absolutely. Now, this sequence business is really important because if you don't have information in a sequence, information is lost. It's not indexed. So if there's a great web page on the internet and it's not indexed by Google or something and you don't know about it, you will never find it. So oral cultures are not stagnant. Stuff that is important stays in the sequence, is repeated constantly, and stuff that loses importance disappears out. So it's constantly being updated and maintained, but it's indexed. In Australian Aboriginal cultures, it's indexed by the landscape itself, and what is better to index knowledge than something that is so permanent. In mobile cultures, in sedentary cultures, they'll either use buildings like the ancient Greeks did, or they use a sequence of ceremonies which are associated with the seasonal cycle. So there's always a way it's sequenced, which is why a circle of stones are so useful for what I'm saying.
It's absolutely fascinating stuff, Lynn. The whole audience was quite taken back by the end of your talk, and it really was one of the most memorable presentations I've seen at any convention, because it was really out of left field. It was something I was not familiar with, but it really struck a chord with me, and I think it's just breathtaking work. And people have been asking me since. They've been asking my opinion of it, and all I can say is I'm very impressed, but I'm certainly not qualified to mark your homework, as it were. So maybe the Skeptic Zone audience can also think about this, and I certainly won't look at Stonehenge the same way again. This
is really important, this feedback. I lived in a world of self-doubt for 4 years, thinking this can't be it. Where am I going wrong? It was only when the doctorate was examined by top-notch archaeologists who approved it that I now feel confident and have gone much more public with it. And now I need to get the book out to get it argued and debated and improved on by other people, including your audience.
Well, Lynn, I wish you every success. If this goes the way that maybe it could go, I can see, a nice TV documentary coming up in your future. Who knows? That would be fun.
That'd be lovely.
That would be great. Now, folks, for more information about Lynne Kelly and to see some of the wonderful books she's written over the years, visit www.lynnkelly.com.au. Lynn, you've written books on spiders, crocodiles, the Skeptic's Guide to the Paranormal, a novel called Avenging Janie, all sorts of things. My goodness me, when do you ever stop?
I don't intend to ever stop. Why would you? Back to my belief all along, reality is awesome. I don't want to stop.
And I hope you never do. Lynne Kelly, thank you for spending time with us. And now it's over to our audience to think very deeply about what you've put forward.
Thank you, Richard.
您现在收听的是 Skeptic Zone， 我是丽丝。我们的网址是 skeptoid.com.cn。 Skeptoid 是一个科学类 podcast 节目，我们每期都会讨论新的话题，包括探讨流行的传奇故事、阴谋论，或者是声称超自然的现象。您可以到 iTunes 的中文网站下载 Skeptoid， 或者是访问我们的网址 skeptoid.com.cn。The Skeptoid Science Podcast by Brian Dunning is now available for Chinese audience. Please tell your Chinese friends to visit skeptoid.com.cn or find Skeptoid on the Chinese iTunes Store. I'm Li Si from skeptoid.com.cn.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, here we are, not too far from the bar, and you don't have to be too far from the bar to meet a few skeptics. Who have we got here?
Laura.
Daniel.
And Scotty.
Right, now the whole thing's only just started. There's a big weekend of controversy, arm wrestling, toe holds ahead of us. What are you expecting of this weekend's conference?
I'm just looking forward to meeting some people. I'm quite new to all of this, so I'm just looking forward to meeting some people that think the same way.
Like-minded people. Now, well, what is your angle on the skepticism?
Well, I teach physics, but the actual putting a name to it as skepticism is very, very new to me. Heard about it all on podcasts, as a lot of people.
Wow. Look, I'm a fan of hologram theory. How do you think that goes as a runner for an explanation of the universe?
For what? Sorry?
Hologram theory. That's where the universe is actually in some kind of black hole, where everything on the external of the universe is a 2D version of the 3D that we're living as a hologram, which is projected in some way.
Yeah, that sounds great. I have no idea. I haven't heard about that before, sorry.
Okay. No, it could have just been some crystal meth I had earlier, so excuse me about that. I've got to say, could you remind me never to take drugs before talking to a physicist again?
Yeah, sure. Not that I see that often, Maynard, but I'm pretty sure drugs are bad in general, okay? You know, but after talking to James Randi last night and his take on reality, it was quite interesting, so yeah.
And what do you make of the great James?
Absolutely brilliant man. He actually did some magic right before our very eyes last night at the fundraising dinner, so we were very much lucky to be treated to a bent spoon and a $50 note that disappeared.
It might disappear behind the bar.
Yeah, I'm not too... Well, yeah.
And what do you make of the crowd here? How would you describe the crowd here? Are they a particular type?
Welcome. Very, very eclectic. No, every single type. I've seen all different ages, lots of different... Yeah, every single type of person.
Okay. And what do you make of the crowd here? I mean, you've been with the Skeptics before. Is there any unfamiliar faces here today?
A lot of unfamiliar faces, but they're all a bunch of freaks and geeks just like me, so I'm right at home.
Look, I'm hoping that Eric von Daniken will make an appearance at some stage. We can only hope.
Very good. That would be very exciting.
Is that with Dancing Girls?
I would hope so.
Okay.
I've got to have a word to any man who's wearing a bacon and donuts party T-shirt.
I was there, you know. Yeah. It's kind of, you've got to live the spirit.
Oh, look.
Spirit of the moment.
I've not seen Penn's Band perform before, and I have not been to a party where they had bacon and donuts, so you had sugar and nitrates. It was fantastic.
It was awesome. It was absolutely, totally awesome. It was great. Fantastic.
What are you hoping from this weekend's festivities?
Well, I don't know. I think that the skeptical community in Australia is growing. I'm hoping it's growing, and I'm sort of warm to see a lot of people here, and what I'm hoping to get is just a lot more of good skeptical thinking.
But what I seem to be getting from people at the moment is like hanging with some like-minded people for a bit of a change.
Yeah, and I think that certainly resonates with me. It's good to hang out with the clan that thinks like you do. Well, in most senses.
Yeah. Is there any one speaker you're looking forward to the most?
Rebecca Watson is probably the person I'm most looking forward to. I mean, I've seen James, Randy, a few times, but I haven't seen Rebecca speak by herself before, and so I'm looking forward to that. And there's, Ken Harvey. There's a lot of other speakers that I'm really looking forward to.
You have a good time. Thanks for chatting to us here. I'm sure you'll have a much better time. This is just the start talking to me. It gets better from here.
Fantastic. Well, you enjoy yourself too.
Okay. Look, I have found the Skeptic Zone listener here. What's your name, sir?
John.
John? A biblical name. That's obviously just some made-up porn thing you're just telling me.
No, it's not. I actually discussed this with another John about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. Well, I think you're going to get a bit of that this weekend, sir.
I know.
Now, what turned you onto the Skeptic Zone? Why in the world would you turn to a Skeptic podcast? I'm sceptical of your interest.
Sure. Well, I heard Richard Saunders on the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and I thought, well, if they're going to have him on that show, then I'd definitely tune in. So I have, and I haven't looked back.
And this weekend, of course, Rebecca Watson is in attendance. You're hoping to have a chat?
No, I can't believe it. It was unbelievable. So I've seen her.
Well, look, you have a good time here, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the speakers this weekend. And thank you for listening. On behalf of Dr. Rachie and Richard and the rest of the crew, we thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, look, there's a few people here, some new faces, some old faces, and who have we got here?
My name's Laurie Smith from the Borderline Skeptical Group.
Borderline, does that mean you're borderline skeptical or you're borderline dangerous?
Borderline with a lot of things, Maynard.
And who have we got here?
I'm Eden Smith, I'm his wife.
Okay, now what are you guys looking forward to this weekend?
Oh, we're looking forward most to meeting you, Maynard. That's why we're here.
Oh, well, now the disappointment's over with, you can get on with your weekend, sir.
Oh, well, we've got a whole weekend to catch up, Maynard.
Have you got a favourite speaker you're looking forward to?
Yeah, Randy.
Wow, okay. Have you seen him before?
Yeah.
I was going to say he's pretty amazing, but everyone says that. But yeah, like, for 84 and to be going like that.
And hey, he's my height. I like it.
Yes, that's right. Yes. Well, look, have a good weekend and try not to start any fights, okay? I know you borderline people can be a bit like that.
We do get a bit radical at times.
Okay, have a lovely time.
He's like,
Jesus, keep appearing on toasted cheeses.
Here we are, we're in the middle of the Immigration Museum. The launch is going off spinningly. I'm speaking to a man who's been to a couple of launches, a few drinkies in his time, and as the outreach person for the JREF, Brian, how is this as a meet and greet, in your opinion?
Pretty good. The food is good, the drink is good, there's a giant boat in the middle of the room that people are walking. Have you noticed this?
No, actually, I've been too busy talking to you, but there's an ark in the middle of the room.
That is correct. If people get a little bit too drunk, there's a sort of an old-timey soiled cot that people can rest upon.
And what looks like a barrel of rum.
Yes, it's a barrel of rum.
And I can see the bunks where Dr Rachie's going to be sleeping tonight, just next to the barrel of rum.
Look, I wasn't going to say that, but we all know it's true.
We know it's true. And when you are throwing these kind of shindigs, and most skeptics probably haven't had to do some entertaining on this level, what are the main features that people need to have when you're doing a meet and greet?
I think that it's important to have plenty of alcohol, because a lot of people are kind of socially awkward and you need that sort of social lubricant to get people talking to each other. It's important to have name tags. We've got beautiful name tags here. So
there's a little bit of controversy help the thing along, like if someone gets a little bit too drunk later, or if there's a revered figure turns up and does something strange. Does that help a little bit, or does that go against it?
Oh, it absolutely helps. It just adds to the rumor mill and gives people something to talk about the next day.
Yeah, look, I personally am hoping for an appearance by Eric von Daniken here tonight.
Oh, if God willing, if he's up there, we will have an appearance by Eric von Daniken, and he can tell us how the aliens built this building.
Look, are there any local crackpots that you've got into while you've been in Australia? Have you had time to investigate the scene?
I have not. So is there anybody I should check out?
Well, look, there's a guy who gets around Melbourne here called UFO Brian, who I haven't heard of before, which, interestingly enough, wears a tinfoil hat and he can read books without opening them.
Wow, that's very convenient. I mean, that saves a lot of time.
Yeah, and look, you don't even have to take the books out of the library. You just walk through the library and you know everything.
Wow, I got to meet this guy.
Yeah, we're hoping to meet him. In fact, I was wondering, when I was at TAM in Las Vegas, I expected someone with a sandwich board to turn up, or have someone who had a bit of a rebuttal to the skeptics, and that didn't happen. I'm wondering, of all your events, has someone turned up to give a counterpoint?
Yes, actually, there was somebody that turned up at TAM this year, or I think also the year before. They're usually asked to leave very quickly. But we're in sort of an open area, and so people can sort of show up and wander around before anybody notices that they're not actually part of the convention. So I think this year there was somebody handing out Bibles. I could be mistaken, but I think it was at TAM the year before. There was somebody who was a climate change denialist who was going around basically just trying to engage in conversation with everybody he could find about how global warming is a hoax. So if we're skeptical about everything else, why aren't we skeptical about climate change?
Look, everyone knows that the issue was decided a long time ago. He should be discussing who was the best Batman. Now, I'm an Adam West supporter. Some people like Christian Bale.
Oh, no, absolutely Adam West. Christian Bale is so serious. He's so dour. And see, the thing about Batman is that at the end of the day, it's a grown man dressed as a bat punching a clown. So how serious can you take this?
Right, so Christian Bale could have been in American Psycho and Batman, but could Adam West have actually starred in American Psycho?
I would love to see that. I think,
having heard his voice as Mayor Adam West, he has that side to him.
Absolutely. There's this theory that there's a multiverse, and so everything that could possibly have happened has happened somewhere. I'm going to find the reality where Adam West starred in American Psycho, and I'm going to live there.
Look, see if you can get a share flat. I'll come there too, because God knows what else wacky stuff's going on that place.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to go find that right now, actually. It's got to be some sort of portal around here.
And alternative medicine is a conundrum.
Now, who have we got here right now enjoying the hospitality?
Steve Walker.
Now, Steve, I believe you're a magician.
I believe it too, yeah.
Now, why are there so many magicians in the skeptical movement?
Well, originally we were picked because we had to set the protocol for testing psychics, and they figured that if anybody was going for the prize who was fake, a magician would spot it easier than a layperson. You know.
That's right.
Because we know without going too far into it, we can see when they're going to attempt something that we know is a basic technique, you know.
Now, when we normally see psychics being tested, they use a set of cards that's got the triangle and the moon. Now, what is that set of cards called again?
Well, some people call them Zener cards. They're invented by Dr. Ryan.
Are they actually good to use? I've heard Penn and Teller criticise them because they say the set's too small, so the chance of randomness is a bit higher.
It's 1 in 5, but I mean, there's been various decks brought out since, so you can have as many as you like, really. I mean,
okay.
But they are distinct symbols.
And what's the kind of woo that annoys you the most as someone who has participated in trickery for people? When you see people trying to be tricked, what gets you mad?
No, the only ones that upset me are the ones that pretend to contact the dead. Because they're playing on people's, you know, they're picking them at the worst time when they've lost somebody. And let's face it, the defences are down, so they probably believe anything at that stage, you know.
Have you had a large reading like, has John Edwards been here lately or someone like that to a large venue? Are they still happening here in Victoria?
I can't remember the last time John Edwards was here, but I remember about 2 years ago he was here, and I live in Sydney, but the girl next door, who was a teenager, flew all the way to Perth just to watch him, spent a fortune.
And because she just recently lost someone?
No. She just believed that he could teach her how to be a success, or I don't know, what the hell.
And who are you looking forward to seeing the most this weekend on the Speaker's Podium?
Rebecca Watson. I've listened to her podcasts on radio, and I feel like I know her. I've never met her, but...
you tend to get that with the media people. You think you know, because the earbuds go straight into your ear. It's a very personal connection. What I like about her is her feistiness. I love her feistiness about the skepticism, and it's a different style. You know, it's a little bit in your face, but it's in your face in a little bit different way.
Yeah, she seems to be on that program that she does. She seems to be like Daniel in the Lion's Den, doesn't she? I mean, they seem to be against her, but she gives as good as she gets. So yeah.
Well, you have a good weekend.
You too.
You're not trying to blend into anything tonight because you actually dyed your beard a bright purple.
I did that because I figured I didn't want to be lumped in with the grey old white beardies. I figured even though I'm grey and I'm old and grey, I don't actually look it at the moment because I now have a purple and blue beard.
Yeah, everyone's saying, he's old and purple. Or they're thinking your beard is incredibly bruised.
They just said to me that I look like I've swallowed a merkin.
And that's worth looking up, folks, at home, let me tell you. And who are you looking forward to hearing speak this weekend? And what do you make of the crowd here? Have you seen your favourite speaker here yet?
Yes, I'm looking forward to hear Rebecca speak. I'm looking forward to hear DJ speak because his podcast hasn't been on the air for long. And I'm looking forward to For Good Reason because I'm a big fan. I have podcasts going in my head all day, every day.
Wow. Now, I get through about 10 hours a week. How many hours of podcasts do you get through?
I collect probably 30 hours a week and listen to 90.
Wow.
I tend to go back over and over and over. I probably know the podcasts better than...
Do you ever get confused? You're going, is this the Skeptic Zone, Skepticality, Skeptic's Guide, or Brian Dunning?
All of those. Dissonance Podcast, Godless Bitches, Skeptics with a K, Young Australian Skeptics, George, Geologic. I could go on. Australian National, Robin Williams is wonderful. I run out, so if anybody's got ideas...
It's really killed radio, hasn't it?
Oh, for me it has. I don't listen to the radio and I rarely watch TV anymore. These people are much more what I want to hear.
Well, I believe that they're narrowcasting to what you are into.
One of them said the other day that if you broadcast, your niche will find you. which I think I'm certainly finding all of the people who I just...
It's certainly true, but coming from the media, let me tell you, it's very hard to convince a broadcasting organisation to let you broadcast and let that happen. I mean, in TV, a show could be on for like a few weeks and they'll pull it off if the ratings aren't well enough.
Yeah, and they've cancelled the Naked Skeptics off BBC 4 in Cambridge in the UK, which I adored. Dr Carl was another one that I'm always in with.
Well, I mean, the BBC is only in slightly less financial trouble than the ABC.
Yeah, don't mention the NHS.
Don't mention that. Look, have a good weekend, enjoy yourself, and don't cork your thigh, sir.
No, thank you, sir, I shan't.
Why do aliens only show themselves to idiots?
Well, I'm here with Adam, and it's not really hot and sticky anymore. When last time I was talking to you, I was sweating like a pig, Adam.
It's it feels like it was only yesterday. I'm actually still sweating from yesterday. That was 3 showers later as well.
Now, what is your position at McKinnon High School?
My official position, maths teacher. I guess my unofficial position, guy sits up the back of the staff room and does very little work.
But look, and let me tell you, people, I was there. You came out, and there was a whole bunch of Year 7s, and you told them to shut their beeswax, and they did. And that is an amazing skill.
I think I've got to credit the actual kids themselves more than me. They're an amazing group of kids. Very, very well behaved, polite, intelligent, and curious.
Yeah. Look, we had a couple of them earlier here tapping the microphone. Hello, what are you expecting to get from the Skeptics meeting over the weekend?
I don't know.
You don't know? No. Well, so that's when you're the most curious, when you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And here's someone that I spoke to as well. What's your name again?
Elizabeth.
Now, as someone young who's been exposed to a little bit of the paranormal and the parapsychological and a current affair, This Day Tonight, those kind of shows, what gets you the most angry when you see something on TV? Is there something, I asked you this the other day and you said nothing really makes you throw a brick at the television, but is there something, an area that you really like to investigate and debunk?
You know what, anything in fitness magazines. I absolutely hate women's health fitness magazines. They piss me off to no end because they're just full of bull.
As a young woman, do you think that they're preying on some sort of vulnerability that everybody feels?
Absolutely. So many self-conscious women, so many people that want to change themselves, and they're looking at these magazines and seeing the worst ways to do it. It's ridiculous.
So it's the old story. They find the vulnerability and use that to sell you something.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's done.
And who are you going to be looking forward to seeing the most over the weekend?
I should say Mr. V because he's standing right next to me, but, I see him too many times already.
I believe the expression is he gets old fast.
Yeah,
I think that's what you're saying.
Exactly. And probably the person who's most thoroughly brainwashed me, Rebecca Watson. I'm very excited to see her.
She's inspiring, and the word I keep using is feisty.
Yes, exactly.
Great. Well, I hope you get to meet her and have a good chat with her.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maynard.
I mean, they seem to have a respect for you, and you seem to do well with them as well.
It's all an act, really. It's they just do it so they get an opportunity to get out of class every now and again. But I appreciate it nonetheless.
Look, as someone who would be terrified of being a parent, you're actually a teacher who has to face the difficulties of being with a whole bunch of kids every day. How do you do that? Because they can be a little bit, mercurial.
They can, but I just tell myself, 10 past 3, I get to go and don't have to worry about them anymore. Their parents can deal with them at that point.
Well, you're going to see a few people using their brain here over this weekend, so that should be warming for you. In warming, I just made up a word there. Warming for you.
Warming. I like in warming. It would have been appropriate for yesterday, I think.
Yes, it certainly was.
Yeah.
Thanks, Adam, and enjoy yourself here tonight.
Thanks, Maynard.
Did you see that UFO sighting that made the news? What did that latest study about alternative treatments really say? Is this photo making the rounds real or a hoax? Doubtful News is a unique website featuring news about pseudoscience, the paranormal, anomalies, and questionable claims framed with a skeptical view. Come visit doubtfulnews.com every day for news about cryptozoology, conspiracies, shams, scams, and more. Follow us on Twitter at Doubtful News. Critical thinking is essential in assessing today's news. Doubtful News helps you decide, can you really believe this stuff?
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, if the Australian Vaccination Network need to change their name, I wonder what they could change it to. Maybe you can come up with an idea to help them out. Yeah, what would you call the Australian Vaccination Network, or what do you think they should now call themselves? It boggles the mind. Next week's show is coming to you from a surprise location. A surprise location, yeah. Somewhere I haven't been for a very long time. In fact, I'm going somewhere I haven't been for over 40 years. Ooh, I wonder if it's changed. I'll let you wonder about that over the next week. And until then, with thanks to those people, of course, who chip in to the Skeptic Zone to help keep the show ticking over, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.